the point that you made about the seasonality of fruits and vegetables in particular, like, first of all, thinking that most vegetables that most people recognize in the store weren't even around like a very short amount of time. Like, when was the last time you were out on a hike and you just saw like a patch of broccoli growing spontaneously, right? Like, these are bred and would not have been recognized, 150 years ago the way we recognize them now. And I give the example of, like, I when I'm going on walks in my neighborhood, sometimes people start gardens and then they'll leave and move and whatever, and a tomato will fall on the ground. And they're absolutely delicious around here. Tomatoes are disgusting from the store. They're amazing when somebody starts a garden. It's a ton of work. They have to work in the hot sun, hours and hours and hours and hours for a tiny yield at a certain time. And I've made the point that these tomatoes are so good and delicious, and I'll have one every now and again. And then there's going to come a day in October, inevitably, where I still like tomatoes a lot, and there's a hard freeze, and the tomatoes are done. It doesn't matter how much I like tomatoes. On October 3rd, I liked them just as much on October 2nd, but on October 3rd, they are not available. They're done. If I didn't save any and they go bad super quick anyway, I don't even have that option. I don't think people realize how little actual plant foods grow, even in tropical environments, even in warm places. It's just, you don't see tons and tons and tons of fruits everywhere. So I think that point that you made earlier, that like when you get it, you do want to attack it. That sugar creates that drive. You take riskier behaviors and all that stuff because you want to get at that food to get fat so that you can live through the winter the way you mentioned.
Correct. That's absolutely it. And we eat and we're carbohydrate addicts because we can, because there are supermarkets. And the shameful thing is, the food manufacturers themselves want to sell addictive foods, and this is where highly processed foods come in. And they're highly processed, not because they're nutritious, not because they're good for you, but because they create the right sensations in the mouth when you eat them. So initially, our mouths and our taste buds and our noses are fooled by the texture, by the sweetness, by the saltiness, or whatever. But what's so interesting is that our satiety hormones are not fooled. So when we swallow that food, the body says, oh, that was a load of rubbish. I'm not going to give you any leptin. I'm not going to give you any ghrelin, which tells you you've eaten enough, because that food isn't going to do me any good at all. Go and eat again. Go and try again. So it switches on further addictive eating. So people go and eat more highly processed foods and more highly processed foods. And what happens? Obviously, they're going to get overweight. And just being overweight and fat, that alone will drive inflammation. And inflammation is the second big major mechanism that drives pathology. So it's all about energy delivery mechanisms, which we've touched upon, and inflammation. And our immune systems are in a state of chronic inflammation. We live in an inflamed world. And we live in an inflamed world because A, we're all poisoned, and B, we are all immunotoxic. The immune system has been switched on, and it's been switched on by the medical profession, basically. And I think the biggest driver of that are jabs. But sugar is a major driver of inflammation. And I can't tell the difference between the brain and the immune system. They are very similar organs, and I think that just like the brain has moods, so the immune system has moods. So if you've got a happy brain that's jolly and got lots of energy, so is the immune system. A happy immune system, it's jolly, it's got lots of energy, and you will be resistant to disease. But if your brain is depressed, if it's miserable, if it's sad, so will the immune system be depressed, miserable, sad. And we know those people are much more susceptible to infections and indeed death. So what we're all taught at medical school, and I can remember thinking at the time, well, that's odd, what's all that about? Is if you have a couple who've lived together for many decades, if one of them dies, there's a very high risk of the second one dying within a year, because they've lost their lifetime partner, and they're sad and think, what's the point of life? And if you're sad and what's the point of life, guess what? You're going to die. So having a brain that functions well, an immune system that functions well, again, much of that is about energy delivery mechanisms. For your brain to, although the brain weighs just 2% of body weight, it consumes 20% of all the energy generated by the body. It's massive. And if you impair energy delivery mechanisms, the first thing you get is foggy brain, can't think clearly, poor short-term memory. And guess what? That's the early symptom of dementia. Now, I know I can reverse dementia at an early stage. Obviously, by the time somebody's going to been demented for years, you know, it's a much more difficult prospect. But the early dementias we know we can reverse. And there are three important things to prevent dementia and to reverse it. Number one is a ketogenic diet. The brain is full of fat. It's full of cholesterol. The brain is fat loving. It's full of, you know, and we need fat for it to work, particularly arachidonic acid and AA and DHA. And we can get those from fish oils. So first, low carbohydrate diet. Secondly, fish oils. But you can also get those great fats from eating animal feeds, particularly offal. Yeah. When people do a carnivore diet, they forget that the most nutritious part of that is to eat bone marrow, and if you can get it, to eat brain as well. But certainly liver, certainly kidney, certainly heart. That should all be part of a carnivore diet. Third thing is measure the homocysteine. Now, homocysteine is a marker of the methylation cycle. And using the car analogy, that's how we heal and repair. So, you know, we damage our bodies all the time just by, you know, by being alive, by using our bodies physically, by using our brains. Of course it creates damage. You can't use a car without it creating some wear and tear. And it's during sleep that we heal and repair. And that's where the methylation cycle is so vital to allow us to make those new fresh proteins, to rebuild damaged joints, rebuild damaged tissues, recreate enzymes that become necessary for recovery. So, and everybody should know what their homocysteine is. Now, the shocking thing is, in this country, if you go and see a doctor, they don't even know what a homocysteine is, let alone how to measure it. There's a wonderful website called Food for the Brain that's set up by Patrick Holford that details how you can, and from that website, you can get a do-it-yourself kit. So you can measure your homocysteine at home. It should lie between 5 and 10. If it's too high or too low, you're a poor methylator. How can we fix that? With B vitamins. Cheap, simple, easy. But again, Big Pharma doesn't want you to know that. Big Pharma wants sick people. Homocysteine, we know, is a risk factor for over 100 diseases. Why? Because so many diseases are associated with, well, I can't heal and repair. So simply doing those three things, you can massively reduce your risk of dementia and reverse it in the early cases. And guess what? Homocysteine and poor energy delivery mechanism is also a risk factor for cancer and for heart disease. So, you know, we have these very, very simple nutritional things that we can all do. And I'm going to tell you a joke now. About 25 years ago, I read a newspaper article about a merchant bank who wanted to target its 100 wealthiest customers for a new investment scheme. So the letter was written. The letter was then sent down to the mail merge department, so everybody could get, you know, a personalised letter that looks if it's from the chief executive. But the scruff in the mail merge department forgot to press the mail merge button. And so their 100 wealthiest clients received a letter that opened up, "Dear rich bastard." Now that's been subsumed into my language. And so, you know, I have patients who come to me, and some are RBs, some are rich bastards, but 99% of them are PBs. They're poor baskets. You know, they can't afford, expensive interventions. So I'm trying to evolve a system of medicine which is available to everybody, which is affordable, which can be incorporated easily into your everyday lifestyle, i.e. it's the most frictionless path. I mean, yes, you know, I know there are doctors who say, oh, I can cure you, and you go over to South America and you spend 20,000 quid on stem cell therapy and you do this. It's not possible for most people. So I want tools of the trade for PBs. And, you know, those tools of the trade always start off with diet. It's got to be low sugar. It's got to be low carbohydrate. Now, I know some people say, oh, well, meat is expensive and vegetables are expensive. Yes, they are more expensive than eating addictive food, which is deliberately kept cheap so that people can get hooked on it. But if you're going to spend your money on anything, you want to spend it on food. And when you get the diet right, the need for expensive supplements becomes so much less. So, So having got the diet in place, then I have a standard package of supplements that I like everybody to take, as I call it, just to get them on the starting blocks. You see, the problem with modern farming is that there is a one-way cycle of nutrients from the soil into plants, into animals, and then we throw it away. We pollute our rivers, we pollute our seas. And the mineral content of soil has fallen progressively over the last 125 years. So that means the vitamin content of food is going to be low, the mineral content of food is going to be low, the essential fatty, the nutritional quality of food is not what it should be.